Okay. My talk is Untrusted Onions, is Tor Broken. It's specifically about, does it sound about right? Okay. Specifically about a de-anonymization attack on Tor that was published last August, and it's the one that scared Agora into shutting down. And so I decided to look into it, see if it was really something to worry about, see if, it broke Tor. And so, presentation is about what I found. So, I go by the name John Shade. It's not my real name, but I go by it in this community. I work at Cylance, and you can find me on Twitter. It's John Shade, but with a 5 for the S, because I'm elite or something. Oh. Okay. Basically what I just said. So I got in touch with the Tor developers, asked if they're worried, and they're like, LOL, no. So I wanted to understand why. And it also interested me that the attack uses machine learning, and there's a lot of machine learning in use at Cylance. So I kind of just wanted to get into machine learning in a way that was unrelated to what I do, just to see how it could be applied to security. Okay. You all know what Tor is, right? Like, do I need to explain Tor to anybody? No? I hope not. Yeah, it's like that. It's like that. So you all know what Tor, thank God. Okay. So, I'll skip all this shit. Alright, so this is the part where it gets kind of different. What this attack does is it fingerprints different types of circuits. It's able to recognize different types of circuits within how Tor builds circuits. And so this is how Tor circuits construction works. It's actually a lot more involved than that 3 hops we all know about. With Bob being the hidden service, server, and Alice being the hidden service client, Tor circuits are constructed like so. I know this diagram is confusing as fuck, but it's honestly the least confusing diagram out there on this. So Bob chooses an onion router to be the introduction point. Now, this is not to be confused with an entry guard node. It's totally different. It's more the onion router that makes the introduction between the client and the hidden service server. And that's when step 2 happens. It does all that and publishes the information to the hidden service directory. Then Alice, when she's trying to connect to a hidden service, finds that descriptor in the hidden service directory, and then chooses a random onion router to be the rendezvous point. Now that's going to be the middle, like the middle of the circuit that's formed. I don't have to go through all this, but basically there's different kinds of circuits, right? And the claims of this paper was that they could identify like specific users' involvement with a hidden service, like a specific hidden service page with 98% true positive rate and less than 0.1% false positive rate. And with a 99% true positive rate is the second attack, which is the stronger attack of the two that was proposed. And basically, what is new about this paper is it's the best implementation of a website fingerprinting attack. And it gets that extra accuracy by using machine learning to do this circuit fingerprinting to narrow down the problem space. And yeah. And sorry if this talk blows. It's my first ever talk, so yeah. So basically, machine learning is used for classification problems. Supervised machine learning, what it does is it takes data that is already labeled and use it so that it can once you've trained an algorithm with data that's already labeled, once you provide with additional data, it can categorize it from the clusters that it recognizes from that were already labeled, and the machine learning algorithm that was used is the C4.5 decision tree algorithm. If you know what that is, that's what the research group used. So. All right, so the passive circuit fingerprinting step, it identified these 4 types of circuits that were mentioned earlier. It's passive, so it can't be detected until nodes have been de-anonymized. But it requires that traffic can either be monitored through the ISP or through entry guard nodes. So entry guard nodes have to be compromised, whereas a lot of other de-anonymization attacks on Tor require both the entry guard node and the exit node to be compromised. And how it does this is there are certain distinguishing features between the circuits, and these are the number of incoming and outgoing cells. And cells are these, I think it's 512 byte units that Tor uses. And duration of activity of the circuit is very different for different types of circuits, and circuit construction sequence is different. And coming back to this, these 4 different types of circuits are just like those formed between the hidden service and the introduction point, the client and the introduction point, and likewise between those two and the rendezvous point. They each have a different sequence, duration of activity, and so on. And for example, the circuits between the hidden service and introduction point are long-lived compared to other circuit types and have exactly 3 outgoing cells. And between a client, the client and the introduction point, they're very short-lived and have the same number of incoming and outgoing cells. So basically, they made this cumulative distribution, plot these cumulative distribution functions, and found they could reliably distinguish between them without knowing the contents, of course. Yeah. And, okay. Probably what I should have explained at the beginning, but a website fingerprinting attack, what it does is it basically for any given page, it can it's like basically what is done is each page is fingerprinted by accessing it with like a Tor browser bundle beforehand, and the pattern of the traffic is unique, and so if you're intercepting Tor traffic, even without knowing the contents, like the pattern of it is unique. And so, let's say you want to monitor 500 different hidden service pages. You'd have the people who are the adversary has to basically browse to those sites themselves and record the traffic traces, and that is the data that is fed to the machine learning algorithm. That is the categories are the specific pages, and so it would associate any traffic with that pattern with that category, which is that page. But a problem with a lot of website fingerprinting attacks is that all the studies done on them are usually have these limitations. And the one that I found most problematic was it assumes sequential one-tabbed browsing. Yeah. I mean, and the way they justify this is that because the Tor browser bundle is slower, people use less tabs. So, and I've actually seen it in a research paper. They said it can be reasonably assumed that because honestly, if you use two tabs, completely screws all this up. Because if you've got those two refreshing at the same time, the traffic will look totally different. It also assumes no background traffic. And that's the problem that's caused when you have more than one tab. And it also assumes that the adversary can train the classifier under the same conditions as the victim. Now, the problem here is that the fingerprint would be different based on whether you have different versions of the Tor browser bundle, different localizations of the Tor browser bundle, and it also assumes the page has not changed at all since you had recorded those traffic traces. Now, all these studies are usually done on somewhere between like 50 or 500 hidden service pages, whereas the amount of hidden service pages is somewhere in the millions. So, to fingerprint all of them, it would be quite an undertaking. Actually, next slide has some of what I already said. All right. So, for every Tor user, there's randomly selected 3 entry guard nodes, and a third of their traffic goes through each one. So, to at least get some traffic from every Tor user, or at least close to it, you'd need to compromise a third of all entry guard nodes, which is like over 700 onion routers. So it is difficult to target this attack. And there's also a problem with this. It's called bias in the hypothesis space. That's something in machine learning, whereas the number and complexity of classification categories increases. Let's say the number of different pages you're trying to fingerprint increases, but the feature information doesn't increase. The true positive accuracy ends up going down, and false positive rate goes up. So when they show these, they show that this had 99% accuracy with, let's say, like 1,000 pages. That would not be the case if they were fingerprinting much more. And even though this the problem space is greatly reduced by the circuit fingerprinting, they still assume sequential one-tabbed browsing, which to me is completely unrealistic. And the stronger attack they talk about, with the 99% true positive rate and like 0.07% false positive rate, that assumes all 3 entry guard nodes are compromised, which is also seems unrealistic. Also the base rate fallacy, which is more involved than I'd like to explain here, but there's a wonderful explanation of it, and I can't really see that link, but it's to an article called How I Learned to Stop Fearing NSA and Love the Base Rate Fallacy. It specifically applies, the base rate fallacy is something in statistics, but that article specifically applies it to Tor traffic and why it's problematic for attacks of this kind. But, Agora could have saved itself a lot of trouble if they read further into the paper and came to this part. So, they're only monitoring 50 pages, and they can only get an 88% true positive rate and a false positive rate of a minimum of 2.9%. And this is in an open world setting. Now, for something to be like admissible to a court of law, you need a lot more certainty than that. But as far as, so my point is, basically this attack, that did scare Gordon shutting down is almost entirely useless in the real world. Now, I can't say whether there's other de-anonymization attacks that actually are effective. I mean, the FBI is rumored to have some, but those details are not public. But what is known is that all the famous busts of people using Tor, it was always OPSEC failures. These are some examples. Many of you may know the story of how Ross Ulbricht was busted. He did not keep his online identity separate. Like he'd cross-contaminate, and another example is you might have heard of the bomb threat at Harvard. He got caught because he was the only person using Tor on the monitored network at the time. So, and also once he had been questioned, he admitted to the whole thing. So, if you're doing something illegal, do not admit it when you are questioned. Just don't do that. And also watch out for DNS leaks. I mean, if it's involving Tor. Now, another one is Sabu from WellSec, where he's tripped up is he did not use Tor consistently. He would usually use it, but one time he connected to his usual IRC account without Tor. And so they were able to catch him and then convinced him to be an informant and caught Jeremy Hammond. But they did not catch, I think his name was something like Mike the Virus. For some reason, he could totally tell that he was an informant now. Another famous case of an OPSEC failure leading to a Tor user being busted is Aaron Oyen Marquez. He ran something called Freedom Hosting, which was used to host a lot of child pornography. What he didn't do is he didn't update his Tor browser, so it was actually vulnerable to a known vulnerability. And FBI was just able to compromise that. And they exploited a bug from CVE 2013-1690. Now, so you should always patch. And they also are able to get into the encrypted laptop because it was not in a powered down state. They were able to, I think they were able to freeze the RAM or something, but. Yeah. Now, yeah, I think my talk is actually running a little short, but don't think you guys will complain if I close it early. Well, there's not much more content, unfortunately. I mean, I could go into. I think you all know like the origins of Tor and why some people are suspicious of it, because it's government funded. Yet it's people are using it as if it will protect us from government surveillance. And there's actually a lot of funding that came from something that's specific, like a department that specifically handles surveillance. I've seen like the receipt. It's kind of funny. It's like most of the funding comes from that. And to this day, it still has a lot of like public grants used to fund it. So there are some people who think it's just a kind of a honeypot of a sort. But considering that almost all the high-profile busts have been optic failures rather than actually just grabbing people with some undisclosed attack, I think it's probably pretty safe if you use it correctly, which a lot of people don't do. There's ways to misconfigure it. You also should use it in combination with a VPN, although it matters whether you're connecting to the VPN with Tor or using the VPN and then connecting to Tor. I do just having trouble recalling it right now. It's not a matter of efficiency. It's just one. Yeah, and it's important to do that consistently. That's what I think. That's what Sabu didn't do. Like, there's one time he did it in the wrong order. And yeah, like one of those will get you caught. One of them is fine. There's also in summary, Tor is not broken by this one attack. It is not broken by any of the attacks in the class of proposed de-anonymization attacks called website fingerprinting, because this is the best one so far. And I can't really verify whether FBI has anything that works. But yeah, OPSEC is your best friend. And that is all. Mm-hmm.